now, and so but we're glad that they're still coming over here. And I know I have said this a couple of times this morning, but one of my childhood friends, Mark Rodriguez, his parents are here. They live in San Benito, and I have the utmost respect for them. I've known them since I was young, a lot younger than I am now, and so I'm very glad that they're here with us. My family is not going to believe this. My kids will not believe this, and my wife will probably not believe this. But when I was in high school and when I was growing up, I was very shy and very reserved. And PD doesn't believe it either. But when I became a teacher, when I graduated, I became a teacher, and their son, Marcos, was a teacher with me. And the teaching and a combination of being with Marcos totally changed me to be more, more confident, more outgoing. I don't know what it is. If you have ever met Marcos, you would remember. I asked PD, I said, do you ever meet Marcos? I don't know. Well, if you did, you would remember. I promise you. You would remember him. But he never met a stranger. And he was always very jovial and happy and outgoing. And it just, that's the way Marcos is. And so he has helped me to transition to that other part. None of y'all believed that I was very shy and not outgoing. But that, I promise you, that's the way it was. That's my parents. So anyway, we've been doing a series of sermons on Saul. And Saul is transitioning to Paul. And we'll talk about that next week. But as I was working on my sermon on Tuesday, I thought, how can I not do a sermon on Mother's Day? And so when I think of mothers and I think of Mother's Day, the passage that comes to mind, and I'm going to wait for that to kind of go away there, is Ephesians 6, 1 through 3. And Paul is writing to the church in Ephesus, and he's giving them a lot of different things that he wants them to know and wants them to do. And if you know how what Paul did was he would write this letter to the church in Ephesus, and the leaders at the church in Ephesus would get up and they would read that letter out loud. And then they would pass that letter on to other churches and other congregations, and they would receive the other letters. And so I imagine in my mind that a person is standing up in front of a congregation in Ephesus, and they're going through all of the doctrine that Paul has written to the church. And then when they don't have chapters and verses, but then whoever's reading the letter stops and he says, children, every single one of us in this room was a child at one time. And we have parents. And it says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And he says, honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with the promise, so that it might be well with you, and that you may live long on the earth. And I wonder what they thought when they heard that. I wonder what children think. I wonder what my children say when I stand up here and say, children, obey your parents in the Lord, and to honor your father and mother. So today is Mother's Day. Is it Mother's Day in Mexico too? Is it the 10th? Yes. So it happened to coincide today. So we live in an age where we have established a day where we honor our mothers. That was something that when Paul is writing that, he's going back to the Old Testament. He's going back to the 10 Commandments. Commandment number 5 was honor thy father and mother. But we have taken something that's basically a religious concept and put a day on it and commercialized it for the purpose of profit. Just like Christmas, the birth of Jesus is a documented fact in the Bible. But the world has created a festival out of it and made the engine that drives the revenue of many businesses. I use Christmas because Christmas is the only day, if my source of statistics is correct, the only holiday where we outspend Mother's Day. And I worry about that a little bit because Christmas, at Walmart, they start putting Christmas stuff in like October, September nowadays. Now, I know you can't put Mother's Day out in February because mostly it's flowers. But you start hearing about that earlier and earlier. But Mother's Day is a day where we honor a mother. And that's a commandment from God. It's not a commandment that's just spoken haphazardly. Like I said, it's found in Exodus 20, verse 12. It's found in Deuteronomy 5. Jesus says to honor your mothers in Matthew 15:4, and in Mark 7:10, and in Luke 18:20. And then Paul, the passage that we just read in Ephesians chapter 6, says to honor our mothers. But unfortunately, society has picked up on this theme, and they've turned this into a day of candy and cards and gifts and jewelry. But I would be willing to bet that if I asked any mother in this room, would you rather have honor, respect, and love from your child? Or would you rather have candy or a car? As a mother, you want your children to honor and to respect and love you. And we need to realize that honoring our mother wasn't man's idea. I know if you go back and you look at the history of Mother's Day and the lady who came up with this idea, but God originally started this way back into the Old Testament. And we are to honor our parents. Specifically, we're to honor our mothers. But that got me thinking, why should we honor our parents? Why specifically should we honor our mother? Well, the first thing is, in Exodus 20, verse 12, and Ephesians chapter 6, it says, honor your parents because this is the first commandment with a promise. And what is that promise? That it may be well with you and that you may live a long life on earth. I cannot help but when I see people who've lived on this earth, I'm not going to look at anybody, I should probably look up, who've lived a long time on this earth, I can't help but think they must have honored their mother and father. They must have obeyed their parents because the Bible says you have a long life. And I personally go back and I think about my grandmother. My grandmother passed away a few months short of her 100th birthday. But I remember as a child, I don't even know how old I was, but I remember going to my grandmother's house, and her mother was there. And her mother was in a recliner. And my grandmother waiting on her mother, hand and foot, and taking care of her. And my great-grandmother, I don't even remember how old she was when she passed away. But my grandmother, who lived to be 99 years old, honored and respected her mother and took care of her. And I remember that so vividly. But mothers have experience in life. Did your parents your mother specifically ever give you advice? Did they ever tell you things? Did they share from their own life experiences? Or maybe they said, don't do this or do this because you know what? The mothers had been there. No matter how old you are, your mother's older than you. Well, I don't know, maybe that's not always the case. But I mean, your birth mother would have to be the case. But when I think about mothers are also wise. You know, you've seen the chart as children, as they grow up, they think their parents know everything and they love their parents. And then as they become teenagers, not going to look at anybody, as they become teenagers, they start questioning, oh, is my dad really that smart? Does my mom really know everything? But those of us who are older, now do we look back on our parents and think, wow. I'm blessed to still have my mom and my dad. But I know of so many others who wish that they just had one more chance to speak to their mom. Or to get advice from their mom. Or to hear from their mom. Or to spend time with their mom. We need to cherish those times. But I also think mothers are very intuitive. And sometimes when mom gets that little feeling, she's not wrong. A lot of times they're right. A mother's intuition goes a long ways. But you also, when you think about mothers, they're selfless. When mothers are telling you something, when they're doing something, and mothers aren't perfect, but a lot of times when mothers are telling you something, or they're wanting you to do something, or they're asking you to clean your room, or whatever they're doing, a lot of times it's not for their own good. It's because they're doing it for what's in your best interest. And too often and too many times in life, we come into contact with too many people who are selfish, and they're trying to tell you things and trying to get you to do things because it's going to benefit them in some way. But mothers aren't like that. Mothers want what is best for their children. And so when the Bible says that you may live long on the earth and that your life may be good, it's because we need to learn from the experience and the wisdom and the intuition and the selflessness of our mothers. Second reason we are to honor our mothers is because becoming a mother, God knew that becoming a mother was not going to be easy. In the perfect world, way back in the beginning in Genesis, when man and woman were in the Garden of Eden, if you can imagine it, birth probably would have been natural, joyful, relatively easy, probably even painless. But after the sin of Adam, God declared that the process would become very difficult and very painful. Genesis 3:16. God says to the woman, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. And your desire shall be toward your husband, but he will rule over you. I would be willing to ask the ladies here who have gone through childbirth, would you go through that? I don't know how long the process, I don't know when you realize you're pregnant and all of the journey that it takes to delivering that child. But if I told you, I would give you $100, would you go through that whole process? Janessa, would you go through all of that process? You don't get a baby out of it, you just get a $100 bill. I would be wet. At least one person is shaking their head no. What if I said, if you went through that whole process, you went through that 9 months, you went through the pain of bearing that child, and I would give you a puppy? No child, just a puppy. It's not worth it, is it? Everything that you go through, the pain and the suffering and the long days and the long nights prior to the baby even being born, is only worth it because of what you get out of it. It's inconvenient. And maybe I'm just not right on this, but has any baby ever been born on their due date? Or any of y'all born on your due date? I think the doctors are just throwing darts at a wall saying, oh, I think the baby's going to be born here. I remember when my children were born, I was not a very good first-time father. Hopefully Andrew is way better. But I remember Myra coming to me on a Friday morning. I had gone out, I don't know if I was getting ready to go to work or I was going jogging or something. And she comes to me, and our first child, and she's thinking, oh, I think it's time. And I'm thinking, can I go to work for a few hours and get back? Because I've got so much to do. Fortunate for me, she was not in a violent mood at that time. Because I've learned since then. Our second child, I had just come home from Houston. Our second child was born in Houston. And then Myra calls me at 6 that morning and says, can you come back? She's ready to come. And then our third child was born on a Sunday during a football game. They don't come at the most convenient time. But becoming a mother is not easy because it's called labor for a reason. And I am fortunate that I never had to go through that, but I have seen it take place. And it is laborious. It is hard. It is difficult. Becoming a mother is not easy. And as we mentioned before, becoming a mother is painful. I went to the doctor the other day, And they told me they were going to draw blood. And I told the nurse, I said, you know, I cry like a baby when I get a shot. And she said, you couldn't handle having a baby, could you? I was like, no, I couldn't. Because the shot that I was about to get is what they give to stop the pain for some women. I couldn't imagine what my mother or what mothers have had to go through in giving birth. But a woman has been designed by God to conceive and bear children. This basic role of a life giver. I don't know if you ever thought about that term. As a life giver, from the beginning of time is a painful process. Carrying children, bringing them into the world, nursing them to the point of independence is filled with pain and discomfort. And thousands of years of medical advances later, childbearing still remains painful and dangerous. But while becoming a mother is not easy, while it's inconvenient, it's laborious, it's painful, I would be willing to bet that every single one of you would say it's worth it. What you get out of that experience is worth it. But you know what? God knew we would be better if we honored our parents. God knew that it would be difficult to become a mother, but God knew it was also going to be difficult to be a mother. It's bad enough that there's great pain necessary to bring a child into the world, but mothers also have to experience the pain that their children feel in their lives as well. There is no medicine or no counseling technique that can neutralize that thing inside a mother that enables her to feel what her child feels. Sometimes long before the child feels it, and sometimes long after the child feels it. I know a lot of you are not in the age where you have children at home or going to school, but when your child comes home and tells you about something that's happening at school, or how they're being mistreated, or how they're being bullied, or whatever they want to say, how do you feel as a parent? Boy, I'm going to that school right now, and I'm going to go talk to... No. You hurt when your children hurt. And for a mother, there is no greater hurt than when your child hurts. From the very beginning, mothers have had to suffer because of what their children did. All of us as children make mistakes, and we do things that hurt our parents. But also things happen to our children. I'm not going to read through all of these. But have you ever thought about how Moses' mother felt when she put her baby Moses, just a few weeks, months old, in the Nile River and put it in a basket and pushed it away? How did she feel about that? As she watched her baby drifting away, and she tells her about 8-year-old daughter and said, "Can you watch my baby? I've got to leave." How do you think she felt at work that day, knowing where her baby was? How do you think Samuel's mother felt when she had given an oath that, "God, if you just give me a baby, I'm going to dedicate him to it"? And she takes him to the temple, and she leaves her baby son, Samuel, there with the priest. And she goes back home and leaves her son. How do you think she felt? How do you think Bathsheba felt when she watched her child die because of her sin? It was her fault that child died. How do you feel? How do you think the widow of Zarephath, if you remember the story where Elijah is going through and there's a famine in the land, and he comes upon this widow, and the widow is outside and she's getting a few sticks because she's got a few drops of oil and a little bit of flour, and she's preparing a meal for her and her son so they can eat and then die of starvation. How do you think she felt as she's preparing that meal? And how do you think Mary felt when she sees her son Jesus humiliated, tortured, and publicly executed by the people that he loved, by the people he came to help, by the people he had already healed? They turn on him and they treat her son like a common criminal. Being a mother is hard. Have you ever seen your child go down the path and you're thinking, I don't want them to do that. I don't want them to date that person. I don't want them to go there. I don't want them to do this. Whatever it may be. Have you seen your child make a decision that you knew was going to cause them pain and suffering? Have you ever seen them make a choice that you're thinking, what are you thinking? Why are you doing that? And as a mother, when they do those things, especially when they're older, do you just hurt inside and you think, wow. Our mothers deserve honor because no one experiences the pain and hurts that life brings longer or more deeply than those who bring us into this world. When our children are sick, when it's the middle of the night and they're not feeling good, they don't walk into our room and knock on the door and say, Dad, where are you? Dad. They say, where's Mom? Or Mommy, can you help me? Because mothers have that empathy, that natural empathy for their children. So we honor our parents because it's going to go well for us. We honor our parents because becoming a mother is not easy. We honor our parents because being a mother is not easy. And we should honor our parents because being a wife is not easy. And I know there's families nowadays that don't have both parents. But God originally meant for there to be a male and a female. In Matthew chapter 19, verse 6, Jesus is talking about Genesis chapter 2. And he says, in the very beginning, God created a male and a female, and for this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother. And the same way, a woman will leave her parents, and the two will become one flesh. So no longer are they one, so they are no longer two, but one flesh. That's what Jesus says. The man and the woman become one. They become two, but the working together is as if they are one. The husband and wife should be one entity. And there's a lot of ways that you can say how they become one. But you know what? That's not an easy process. For a wife, it's not always easy to be married to a man. Ephesians 5:21 through 31. It talks about the idea of how the marriage relationship between a husband and a wife is like the relationship between Christ and the church. And how the wife submits to the husband, but how the husband is supposed to love the wife as Christ loved the church. And what did Christ do for the church? He gave his life. He was selfless. He went through pain and suffering for the church. But you know what? Jesus was perfect. And I don't want to surprise anybody in the room, but your husband is not perfect. And some of you are shaking your head like, no, he is. He is perfect. I'm telling you, your husband is not perfect. And so this is the perfect analogy. But when a woman is married to a man, she's never going to have the perfect husband. She's going to be let down. She's going to get discouraged. She's going to say, what was I thinking? Because when the two become one, we're not perfect. And we never will be perfect. And it's difficult to live in a relationship and stay in a relationship where life gets tough. Because God's intention when we become married is to stay married the rest of our lives. And it's hard. It is very hard. And sometimes when life gets difficult, we don't work through the situation. We don't work through the marriage. We don't become as selfless as we possibly can be to make sure that that marriage lasts. And I know there's all kinds of situations and there's all kinds of scenarios about how that falls apart. But my point here is it's hard to be a wife. It's hard becoming a mother. It's hard being a mother. It's hard being a wife. But the last reason why we honor our mothers is because it's a commandment from God. The primary reason, the reason why we honor our mothers is because God says to do so. Our Lord, the creator, designer, author, sustainer, master of all of this, in His infinite wisdom, He said in the very beginning to honor your mother. Because with God, there's no such thing as chance or luck or randomness. Things don't just happen with God. It's not an accident that things happen. Everything that God does is intentional. And everything that God does is designed and purposeful. God knows what He is doing all the time. We don't ever have to question or doubt what God says. As a parent, have you ever told your child, don't do this or do this, and they say, why? And you say, because I said so. And why do you say that? Yes, maybe you say it sometimes because Bodie wants to stick his finger in a socket, and you're thinking, okay, Bodie, let me explain to you electricity, because if you stick that in there, you don't go through that whole process. Because you say that sometimes because they don't understand. But you also say sometimes, I said to do this or that because I'm the parent, and that's what I'm telling you to do. And why is that? Because as a parent, we know so much more than our children do. Do you wish you could go back to when you were younger and think, if I just knew all of the things that I know now? But children don't know that. Children need a mother and a father who say, do this and do that. And sometimes you have to say, because I said so. And that's what God tells us sometimes. We don't have to understand why God says to honor our mother and father, but God says to do it. And God's thoughts are higher than our thoughts. His ways are higher than our ways. How much higher? For as far as the high as the heavens are from the earth. The gentleman, I believe he was the pilot of the space trip that just went, is a Christian. And I would encourage you to go back and look at the way he sees things when he's on the other side of the moon looking at the earth. And the earth is just this little dot. That's how much higher God's ways and thoughts are than our thoughts. We don't have a right to question God. When God says, honor your mother, we honor our mother. Not just because what she's done in giving you birth, not just because what she's done in raising you, not just what she's done as being a wife, but because God says this is what we are to do. So today, while society sets aside a day to buy gifts and spoil your mothers, and hopefully most of you will be doing that, God has commanded us from the very beginning to honor, to cherish, to respect, to love, to obey. And I believe it's very biblical, and to take care of our mothers. That's what honor means. Honor means we cherish, we respect, we love, we do what our parents say. And I said this a few weeks ago, I don't obey my parents because I'm afraid they're going to get the belt out and whip me like they did as I was a child. But I obey my parents because I love them, I respect them, and I honor them. Every day of our lives, we should be honoring God's gift to each one of us, our moms. Almost everybody that I come in contact with says, my mom was the best mom ever. Well, not every mom can be the best mom ever. But you know what? Your mom was the best mom to you. So while you honor your mother today, maybe you take her out to eat, maybe you buy her flowers, maybe you give her jewelry, maybe you give her a card, maybe you just give her a hug. But I would say, remember to honor your mother tomorrow. And honor your mother the next day. And the next day. And if you if your mother has gone on before you, then honor your mother by being the child she would want you to be. And you honor her legacy, you honor who she is, because you are an offspring of who she is. You are a child of hers. And you can honor her by living the life that she would want you to live. And if your mothers are still around, then make sure you call them today, you talk to them today, you love them today, and you do it as often as you possibly can. And I'm guilty of it as being not doing like that as I should. But I would encourage you to give honor to your mother. Not just today, but every day. This lesson this morning was not for those who are outside the church, those who have not accepted Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, but it's a reminder of who our mothers are and what they have done for us and our responsibility to our mothers. But if there's anything we can do for anybody in a spiritual sense, then please feel free to come forward as we stand and as we sing our invitation song.